So guys, welcome back to RBR, and the new generation of C-Class AMGs is finally here to be headlined by that, which is the new C43 with F1 tech, EV mode and over 600 brake. Don't worry, I'll fill you in on that car later in this video. Today we're talking about one that's perhaps even more important, a car that's become the cornerstone of AMG, and that is the C43, the entry-level C AMG. In the past, it was a little bit of a by-the-way AMG with an engine sourced by Mercedes Benz and other minor tweaks to call it an AMG. However, now they've gone to town on this car, and I'm going to show you every single thing they've changed, including the F1 tech that you'll find inside the engine coming straight out of the AMG 1. I'll also show you a few different interior styles, all the different exterior packages you can get to really customize this car to your liking. I'll retrace some of the history as well. And finally, we'll get to see what this car sounds like, both at a standstill and on the road. We'll get to launch control it, drive it dynamically. Today is the day to see how this, the first of the new C AMGs, how does it fare on the road? Let's check out this, the brand new C43 4MATIC. So guys, that is quite the looker, isn't it, the C43? And having driven it today, I think there's going to be a lot of reasons why this might be your daily choice for AMG, but we'll get onto that. We'll get onto the next C63 a little bit as well. First, a little bit of talk about C43 in general. The name actually came from the first ever C-Class, which was the W202. That actually featured a V8, and rather than being linked to our car today, it's more linked to the V8s that preceded it, like the C55 and the C63s that we were so familiar with. Even back then, that car was, doing 300 plus brake horsepower, but not really related to our car today. Like I said, that followed the V8 lineage. The real first C43 came in the 205 generation, and really it felt like a by-the-way AMG. The engine was, although a really nice bi-turbo 3-litre V6, it was a hand-me-down from Mercedes Benz that you would have found in a plethora of other normal Mercedes Benz cars. Yes, it had 360-odd brake horsepower, 0-60 of 4.7 seconds, but nothing really to differentiate it on the outside. It didn't even have a unique grille. It barely had unique wheels. Inside it had a bit of stitching and leather, etc. It did sound good though. It sounded bloody good. Even the exhausts were like, crappy effort, if we're totally honest. And it was just, but it did really well because despite that, the engine and the little tweaks that AMG made the car exciting enough for someone to aspire towards, a C63 or just enjoy it as a daily. The facelift came, and because AMG saw that people were taking it seriously, they kind of doubled down on it, particularly on design. They gave it the twin bar off the pre-facelift C63, a few more interesting wheel options, seats, and it all became a little bit more exciting, quad pipes on the rear. So AMG was starting to take it more seriously. They even gave it more power at 390, but still that same engine. Indeed, the gearbox was a bit of a by-the-way gearbox. It was a 9-speed torque converter that wasn't amazing. Suspension, not really touched that much. The new car is just not like that. Okay, yes, it's gone from a V6 down to an inline 4, but they've changed everything. The first and the most important thing is that engine, because it was something we were worried about. We all heard the rumors that it was going down to a 4-cylinder, and immediately I thought, and I'm sure a lot of you guys thought, that like the previous C43, it was going to be some hand-me-down from the normal 4-cylinders in the new C-Class series. That's not the case, okay? This engine instead is the engine that you found in the car that we absolutely love, the A45S. It's the M139 engine out of the A45S, which I'll remind you is the most powerful production 4-cylinder engine in the world. It helped the A45 smash the Nürburgring compact car record, okay? That engine is now longitudinally placed here in the C43. But just like the A45S we love, it's not a mass-produced engine like the last C43. It is a one-man, one-engine unit. So it's been built by one engine builder out of Falterbach, just like they build the V8s for the GTs, etc., just like they build the V12s. This is a unit that's been lovingly crafted by one person. That means so much to the AMG custom because this is really ingrained in our heritage. Now, the other big news is the E-Turbo, okay? This comes, like I said, straight out of Mercedes AMG F1 technology, and it's a clever little unit. And essentially what we have, if we zoom into it, we have got a 4 centimeter electric motor that sits inside our turbocharger shaft in between the compressor wheel and the turbine wheel. And what this does is it spools up before the exhaust gases even have a chance to get into the turbo, and thus gives you a more of a naturally aspirated immediate power delivery. So you have absolutely no turbo lag. And this is a large turbo that we have in here, right? Lots more boost pressure. Essentially, it makes it feel more like a natural engine. You get more torque, lower down, and what you end up with is 408 brake horsepower, 500 Newton meters, which is actually a little bit less than the predecessor, okay? And a 0 to 60 claimed of 4.5 seconds, which we will test later and see just how accurate that is. You also do get an additional 14 brake horsepower if needed from the belt starter generator, which is in there as well. Now this engine thus is not shared with any other Mercedes Benz. It's only shared with cars like, say, the SL43, the future C43, and that makes it, I think, that much more special. What else have AMG changed? Well, first of all, pretty much everything. So you got the adaptive suspension that you normally find in higher up AMGs, 3 stages, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus. You've got more rigidity measures, such as the strut that goes across our front suspension. You've got shear panels at the bottom, lots of stuff done to make the car more rigid. Gearbox was the other thing that really let the previous car down, and this car won't let you down in that regard. It's got the 9-speed wet clutch gearbox that you'd find in something like an E63. So the shifting is going to be pretty much instantaneous if it's the same as that car was. So cherry on top as far as I'm concerned. The other big news is rear wheel steering, which goes up to 2.5 degrees on the rear, which is great. We've got AMG's variable ratio steering as well, which is important. The 4MATIC system pretty much shared with the predecessor, so it's bias 69 to the rear, 31 to the front. I wanted them to do the fully variable one that they got in all the other cars, and that's the only thing that I think lets this car down a little bit. Of course, you've got the bigger brakes, 370mm on the front, etc. So more stopping power, which is important. AMG's exhaust system, as you would expect, which is augmented inside the car, picking up sound directly with a microphone from the engine and pumping it in. We'll see what that's like later. So basically, absolutely everything changed, and it's all from AMG, right? But the proof of the pudding with these things is in the eating, so we'll see how that fares. Now, in terms of design, unlike the previous generations, they've gone a little bit more to town, not massively. So the AMG specific grille is there. The front is basically the same as the AMG Line C Class, but if you get aerodynamic package like I showed you last time, you can get the extra Aeroflex, the extended front lip on the front, the extended side sills, Aeroflex on the rear, a larger spoiler as well. Our car today is the carbon package with the carbon mirrors and the carbon version of that extended spoiler on the back. What's cool is the wheels, they're 20 inches all around, which we've never had on a C AMG, not even in the C63. The best that car ever had was 1920, and that really makes the car look really special. In terms of variants, of course you have the saloon, you also have the estate, which also gets an aero pack as well, which is cool. Although, you might be thinking, where is the coupe cabriolet? There is not going to be a C coupe cabriolet coming in the future, okay? There is rumoured, and we've seen spy shots of another car, which could be a CLE. So it will replace the C and the E somewhere in the middle of those two cars. I think it'll probably be powered by 4 cylinders as well. I would be amazed if they gave it a V8. Can you please give it a V8? That would be great. After this, of course, C63. Some of you might be hoping V8. That ain't happening. It's got the same M139L longitudinal 4-cylinder engine in that. The body will be a more exaggerated version of what you see here. So we're going to have wide arches on the front. I think a completely unique front end, everything from A-pillar onwards. Of course, AMG wheels, etc., etc. So it will be a much more aggressive looking car, but that's not where the story is on this car. It's more about the P3 hybrid system that sits within it. That is going to make this really quite special. It takes so much from the AMG 1 hypercar, like AMG's performance batteries, which sit on the rear, with something that's called an EDU. It's the electric drive unit, and it's a really clever little unit. Within here, we've got our electric motor, which is a permanently synchronous one, like you'd see in something like an EQS or a Taycan, etc. So it's always alive. We've also got our limited slip differential, and we've got a 2-speed gearbox for that electric unit as well. All of that sounding just like our top level EVs, okay? Alongside that, the AMG Performance Batteries. These are cooled in the same way that the AMG 1's batteries are, okay? You've got these individual cells, and you've got liquid coolant that keeps them cool. That combustion engine by itself gives about 440 brake, but that hybrid system, although it gives continuous 100 brake horsepower, can give you 200 more at a peak for 10 seconds. That means the next C63 will be reaching 640 plus brake horsepower if you need it. That's crazy. What's the torque going to be? They're saying higher than the current V8 AMGs. 0 to 60, it's got to be close to 2 something, maybe. Who knows? But it's not far away. We're going to see it soon. Will it impress us? Only time will tell. Today we have to see whether the cornerstone of AMG impresses us, and that's the entry-level C43. First, I'm going to show you the inside, then we'll head out and see how it does on the road. Inside C43 is a nice place to be. We like the 206 interior already. Some things I don't like about the normal one that are better hidden in the AMG because you've just got better material. So you've got use of Napa leather everywhere, contrast stitching. This one has got the red and the black, which is quite a nice combination. However, one that I absolutely loved was the black and the yellow. And I took lots of shots of that to show you guys. I don't know which territories are going to get that as an option, but if you do, just get it because it looks so nice. Red and black still looks amazing because you have got Napa. You've got the brand new AMG Performance bucket seats debuting in the C43. I think you'll see them come across every new AMG in the future. They're lovely. A lot of it is similar to the old AMGs, like the fake seatbelt holes in here, but you have got the Affalterbach crest on the headrest. You've got tickle holes through the middle here, as we discovered last time as well. They really hug you well, really like the W204 C63 did as well. And they really keep you in place for what, as you'll see, is actually quite a dynamic car. Now, the other great thing they've done is I've hated this steering wheel, right? Particularly because the spoke was so horribly thick. AMG have taken that feedback and have created a steering wheel spoke, at least, that is much, much better. It is literally the spoke from the previous gen plastered onto the wheel of the new Mercedes Benz wheel. Yes, these touch controls are still horrific, but in terms of the actual spoke and you're holding it and you're driving, it now feels like home again. So thank you, AMG, for doing that. Please bring it across all your cars. Absolutely loving it. The other cool change in C43 that other AMGs don't have, you've got a few more screens in here within your AMG control units than you've had before. If you don't know about the control units, your right one controls which driving mode you are in. So we go from everything from wet mode or slippery mode into individual that you can configure yourself within here, as I've shown you guys many times. Comfort, sport, and your top mode of Sport Plus that has your launch control, as you'll see in a minute as well, which you're going to love. But on the left-hand side, you've got like your suspension that you can do, your manual gearbox, AMG dynamics, but now they've added a few options. For example, this one gives you your telemetry, and it's right here. Or you can get engine data, again, just one click away rather than having to go into the engine system here. Or finally, one more, which is the vehicle data itself. So all of those menus are accessible through this left section, which is great. Of course, you've got the exhaust one as well, which is the most important one. But they've added more, they've increased the usability of that, which is great. I still think the door card here is boring in the 206. Some cut or some interesting AMG, graphic would have been better in there. AMG can improve upon this. They're not hand-tied by Mercedes. What they have improved is lovely carbon fiber coming through here as well, which is cool. Driver zone, of course, AMG specific. So you've got the Super Sport display, which animates beautifully. You've got all the other normal ones that you get in the C-Class. I'm not going to go over those. But Super Sport is there. Track pace is there, so you can have your wheel angles, brake pedal percentage, accelerator pedal percentage, G-force on the left, and then the lovely Super Sport display in the middle. It all looks great. AMG and Mercedes both really nailing the whole digital game when it comes to branding, so I'm really pleased with that as well. And the rear is actually pretty spacious, I think because the AMG buckets are a bit slimmer. I like the tickle holes, they're cool. But because they're slimmer, I think it gives you the feeling of a bit more space. The rear seats, they're not just, trimmed to look AMG, they've got those same cuts like the tickle holes here. So the rear looks quite bespoke AMG as well, which is nice. All Napa leather. Ambient lighting, I think, works better in the back as well, and the door cards all look a bit more interesting. You get a lovely view of the front with the carbon and everything. But yeah, pretty comfortable. None of the cars here had any pan roofs though, which is interesting. I wonder why they've done that. But yeah, generally, really quite comfortable in the rear. Good daily. Again, this is the theme of this video. This is a good daily car. Of course, within the system, you have got AMG track pace, as I said, first C43 to get launch control. We're going to check that out in a second. Before I go into that, let's see what the car sounds like first. What do you guys think? Because, of course, a lot of fear around what this car is going to sound like even more fear on the C63. I've put it into Sport Plus, which you don't need to. We're going to do AMG Motion Start. Now, if you don't know what that is, press the engine button, then hold one of the paddles, and you'll get a more interesting startup. On the road though, it's a different story. I'm really surprised by this car, and I'm excited to show you what it can do dynamically. Right guys, here we go, new C43. I've been dreading this perhaps almost as much as the C63. But now we're here and I'm excited. Let's get into Sport Plus. First corner. Oh, I can already feel the rear wheel steer. That feels great. Let's test it here. Oh, this is a lovely feeling. I would never be doing this in the old C43. What a fantastic addition. God, it makes the car that much more nimble. Sometimes rear wheel steer feels too on rails and a bit too unnatural, but here, what it's doing here is it's allowing me to go faster through these corners, knowing that I've got the ability to like turn the car in that much more because the rear is supporting me rather than working against me. It's a lovely feeling. This feels so different to the standard 206. That car felt so heavy and roly-poly. You guys remember I was so disappointed with the standard one that, you know, neither sportive nor comfortable. But this one, it's got a bit of both. The other nice thing about Sport Plus is we've got some pops and bangs happening. They're kind of A35-like, perhaps a bit quieter than that, but they're there. It's kind of telling you that, you know, this is an AMG. It's not your standard C-Class. I think it helps. It'd be lovely if it was louder. It's not. Are they giving that, you know, leeway for the C63, I wonder? It's quite possible. But I just can't believe how this car handles, first of all. We need to finish handling. The normal car feels so heavy, so roly-poly. The rigidity measures that they've added here makes it feel so much lighter. I promise you I would not be attempting anything near the type of driving that I'm doing here in that car, because it just frankly would not be able to handle it. It felt like, you know, almost an S-Class size limousine. This does not feel like that. This would give the M340i a run for its money, particularly with regard to steering. You know, AMG do steering so well, and the steering in this, it's so communicative. I know what the wheels are doing. It's nothing like the X-Drive BMWs. Yes, you've still got torque coming through our front drive shafts, but you know, you haven't got that horrible torque steer feeling. You've got instead, you know, proper feedback, which is exactly what I want. I want to know what my wheels are doing when they're doing it. And that gives you the confidence, plus the rear wheel steer. Wow, you end up with a car that's so fun. Some brilliant roads. I mean, well done AMG for picking this. These are some serious turnings and some seriously dynamic stuff that this car is having to do. It's not a by the way AMG, it just doesn't feel that way. The engine as well, really responsive, which is of course, we're hoping for that, you know, F1 tech, etc., etc. It feels very responsive. I've had no turbo lag at all so far, so you know, that E-turbo is doing its job. They said that when you take your foot off and you're coasting, it keeps spooling, unlike a normal turbocharger, and then when you get back on the power, it's immediately there like a natural engine. It doesn't feel quite like a natural engine. And the other thing they said was that lower down, you'd have a lot of responsiveness. Let's try that. Let's slow down for a second. It doesn't feel as power hungry lower down. I think that maybe they're saving that for C63, where you get that immediate burst of power. I think it's better than the old C43 in that regard, but it's not like a massive, massive difference. Instead, what I'm loving is the fact that this just doesn't feel like a single turbo engine. Much like the A45S, it just feels so responsive. And I think very much like that car, actually. A45S sounds better, it just does, right? But in terms of engine response, it's so similar. And this is the benefit now. We've got a full-fat, proper flagship AMG's engine inside the entry-level C43. You didn't have that before, okay? I know it was a bigger engine, I know it was a 3-litre V6, etc. But either way, that was not a proper AMG engine. It didn't feel like it didn't behave like it didn't respond like it. This engine certainly does, and that F1 influence, the E-turbo, really shining through here. Right guys, as always, launch control, let's try it out. Feels quick, does feel very quick. And here we've managed a time of 4.2 seconds. That's pretty damn good, you know. That's quite the improvement of your official figures. It is damped today as well. I'm impressed with that. For a daily AMG, when you look at things like GLE 53, etc., this smashes those cars in terms of 0 to 60. So I also like the way that the launch control sounded. It sounded potent, so that's cool. But more than anything, the speed of the car, it's how it feels. You know, does it feel speedy? And this car most certainly does, believe me. To me, it feels faster than the old car. It feels as quick as your M340i's of the world, etc. To be honest, it feels fast enough for normal roads. We know that our current crop of performance cars with 600 plus brake, etc., getting too fast for the road. So this is a nice balance of usable daily speed. That links to the 4MATIC, which I thought, you know, 4MATIC Plus might be better with the fully variable, but honestly, this feels pretty rear-wheel driven, if I'm honest with you. I think that bias is in most of the time. I can't believe I'm doing turnings like this in a C43. It just boggles the mind for me. They've done a really good job on the handling of this car. I think that the 200 kg heavier P3 hybrid system of the C63 is going to do it no favours. I hope that's not the case, and I hope they've managed to work their magic into it, because in terms of weight and dynamism, this feels great to me. If it had a V8, I'd be so happy with this car. I think it would be an amazing emotional AMG. This is still a great AMG. It's a really good daily, I think. You know, you've got a really responsive engine, a car that's actually very comfortable. If I put it down into comfort for a minute, let's slow things down. The roads here aren't perfect, but I hated the normal suspension in the normal C-Class. It was just not comfortable. And whereas this is a sportier car, thanks to the adaptive suspension, it's that much more comfortable. The roads here aren't perfect, but it's dealing with the bumps and everything in a much more luxurious way than the standard car was. And like I said, when you're paying, you know, over 50 grand for a standard C300, you kind of want adaptive suspension as standard. You need it to be comfortable. This C43, as I suspected, it's got that breadth of ability. You put it into comfort and it's just a normal C-Class. It's doing all the normal C-Class things. Then you chuck it into Sport Plus, you've got a few more AMG sounds coming through and loads of dynamism and frankly handling that I just was not expecting from this car. It's so able to put the power down. The rear wheel steer is helping so much. It's so fun to drive fast. I know I keep saying the same thing, I'm really sorry. Gearbox. It's quick. It's not E63 quick. It's the same box as we said. Obviously, it's been geared slightly more towards comfort, but you know, still, yeah, it hasn't got that instantaneous. It's quicker than the previous generation, undoubtedly. Just the format of it being, you know, a wet clutch is going to do that versus the torque converter, but yeah, it's not quite to the level of the prime AMGs, but again, for entry level, you're not going to be discouraged from using the pedals. In fact, you know, I've been using them throughout this drive here, and I think I would continue using them in ownership as well. What do we think of the sound? I like the fact that we've got some pops and bangs happening in the back. As reduced as they are, sometimes it just feels like someone knocking on here, but something's better than nothing, to be honest. I'm sure some work can be done aftermarket on that to make it a little bit better. So sound, I think, as much as we could expect. The augmented sound on the interior, it feels like it's coming from the engine. Like I said, it's not pre-recorded. There's a microphone in there picking up the sound, giving you the AMG real sound through the speakers, which I think is a good compromise. I mean, I'm never interested in letting people on the outside hear my car. I want to hear it myself. And this sounds okay. It's a full cylinder at the end of the day, you know. How much can we expect from it? For me, the big standing point versus M340i is the steering, because the speed, the handling, the agility, it feels all very similar. The engine response is fantastic of this. 340i obviously sounds a lot better, no doubt about that. But the steering of this, plus the rear wheel steer, in my opinion, puts it in another league. It just makes it, you have so much more confidence driving this, honestly, compared to that car. And it really brings it a level higher, I think. So guys, I've enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. It's a really good indicator for entry-level AMGs of the future. I'd quite like to have, I think, the wagon. Yeah, wagon aerodynamic package. That would be a very special car. I'd like to see what you guys can do with the exhaust aftermarket to improve it, because we know the A45 can sound pretty good. And I suspect that a lot of us might end up preferring this to the C63. Maybe I'm wrong, but I am excited to try that car more than I was, say, half an hour ago. So guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this. I've really enjoyed this. I'm excited to drive it again. I'm half thinking, do I get one? Which is always a good indicator. If you've enjoyed this episode of RBR, as always, please do like, subscribe, and subscribe, and subscribe, and most of all, subscribe so you always get notifications. And I'll see you guys next time. I've actually got quite a lot of time left with this car, and I'm going to dive into it and see what else I can unearth. See you guys next time.